तमाम साथियों को एक बार फिर यादी मदद and like to welcome Rashida Saiba for our next presentation for today. Just for everyone's information, tomorrow morning, Dallas time 9 o'clock will be follow-up presentation by Rashida Saiba. Ji Rashida Saiba, welcome.
Thank you, Aziz Bhai. Without more ado, having apologized sincerely to everybody, I would like to start today's session with a very short prayer about light. There is in our faith a dua called Dua-e-Noor, and we know that the Prophet and our Imams used to recite this dua, and this dua asks for light in 16 of our organs. So it says, "Oh Allah, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
This conference will now be recorded.
Allah, make a light in my heart, make a light in my ear, and a light in my eye, and a light in my hair, and a light in my skin, and a light in my blood, and a light in my bones, and a light in my nerves, and a light in my muscles, and a light in front of me, and a light behind me, and a light on my right-hand side, and a light on my left-hand side, a light on top of me, and a light below me. Ameen, Ya Rabbal Alameen." And the reason why I have chose this Dua-e-Noor, if any of you are interested, please ask me later. I will give you the reference to it. What I wanted to say was that today's presentation is about the Ismaili centers, and I think, inshallah, my hope is that by the end of this presentation, you will understand how the Imam's light is spreading in the world, not just through his moments, his murids, but through his actions, such as buildings, gardens, and many, many other things that he does under the umbrella of the AKDN. So my title today is Maulana Haziman's Vision, the Ismaili Centers Around the World. This series is about Jamaat Khana. And every one of these centers, the main focus is a Jamaat Khana hall. And I wanted to share with you that some of you may know this, some of you may not know this, that Maulana Hazar Imam at Eglamour, his secretariat is separate from his living quarters. And you may know, some of you, that his living quarters are actually called the Jamaat. And the way Jamaat is written by Maulana Hazar Imam, because he has used the word in his comments at the opening of the Ismaili Center, he spells Jamaat with a TH, because it is not Jamaata, like in the English letter T is very hard. It is a very soft T there. So the TH is to give you that indication that this is Jamaat. So Imam calls his own living quarters Jamaat, and that should tell each and every one of us how important the Jamaat is to the Imam. And he is within the Jamaat, he is in the Jamaat. We Jamaat need to be more conscious of him. Let's go on then to the next slide. I've chosen this conclusion of the Imam's speech. This was the very first speech he made on Islamic architecture, and it was at the Asia Society in New York on the 25th of September 1979. This is the end of the speech, quite a longish speech. Towards that vision of the future, we'll remember the Surah of Life, Surah An-Nur from the Quran. It tells us that the oil of the blessed olive tree lights the lamp of understanding, a light that belongs neither to east nor west. We are to give this light to all. That is my emphasis. It's not in the speech. I have italicized to show that this is a very short but a very wisdom-filled sentence. We are to give this light to all. In that spirit, all that we learn will belong to the world, and that too is part of the vision I share with you. 1979, and Alhamdulillah, I introduced this speech to the Jamaat in 1981 in Canada when I was at McGill University doing my master's. I went right across Canada to all the big centers, telling the Jamaat why I thought Imam was doing these projects on architecture. Okay, let's go to the next slide now. So this is the timeline that there are at the moment 6 already built. A 7th one is being built in Houston. And I have put the names of the architects so that you get an awareness of the diversity which is involved here. So 1985, London becomes the first purpose-built Ismaili center in the Western world. And the architects are very famous in Britain. They are British. They are called Caston and Condor Partnership. But it was Mr. Condor who was the main architect here. Then in 85 also, Burnaby in British Columbia. Bruno Freschi is a Canadian-Italian. He's an Italian-Canadian. And one day in an interview, he made a very interesting statement. Somebody asked him about Hazrat Imam, and he said, you know, His Highness, the Aga Khan is the real architect. And I thought to myself, how true that a non-Ismaili should understand what the Imam's status is, that he is the architect of everything. 98, Lisbon, Centro Ismaili as it is called, an Indian architect by the name of RAJPARI, and Federico Valsasina, I think, was the landscape architect. 2003, Dushanbe in Tajikistan, Farooq Nur Muhammad of Canada was the architect. 2008 in Dubai, Rami Al-Dahan, Egyptian, and Sohail Farid were the architects. And the Toronto one is our latest one, 2014, and that was done by Charles Correa, the late Charles Correa, an Indian architect. And we all know that the Houston one is the architect in charge is an Iranian lady who lives between Britain and the United States, and her name is Farshid Musawi. Let's go to the next one, I think, is the map, yes, to show where these are. Something is missing from this. I think we've lost the one in Tajikistan. There is a picture here, but it seems to be, okay. Turn off webcams. Okay, so we can't see that one here, but Burnaby is there. I don't see Toronto either. Oh no, there's Toronto there. But Houston should be there as well. That's Central Ismaili Center in Portugal, the one in London, and the one in Dubai. Okay? So you can see how it's nicely covering the world. Okay? Let's go to the next one. Okay. Now this one is the inside of the Ismaili Center. And I'm very familiar with this center because for 16 years, I used to do guided tours of the public here. And you'll see later on in the presentation. And this was the visit of Prince Charles, the heir apparent to our throne, with his wife, Duchess of Cornwall. And there's Mullah Hazimam near the heptagon. There's a heptagonal fountain surrounded by a heptagonal pattern on the floor, and all this design work was done by a Bavarian German whose name was Karl Schleminger, and he was a converted Muslim, and unfortunately he also has passed away, and Hazrat Imam remembered him at the opening of the Aga Khan Center in London. So in 2008, in an interview with the Gulf News, Maulana Hazrat Imam said this about the center. I think the creation of Ismaili centers is important because they represent the Ismaili community in the important countries in the world. I hope that the center will bring a sense of institutional purpose. We call them ambassadorial buildings because they are representatives of the Ismaili community and all its aspirations. Now, this is such an important statement the Imam has made, that wherever there are Ismaili centers in the world, they actually represent us, the community. And so, what quality should there be? What should be the standard of work that goes on in them? Like Hazil Imam has told us in the Diamond Jubilee Farmans, best practice. He has always emphasized we have to be the best of the best. He has always emphasized meritocracy. And when you enter these Ismaili centers, because we know that they belong to us, but we shouldn't go in them, with a tunnel vision. We should look around and see that how the quality is maintained. The Ismaili Center is the oldest, over 30 years now. But if you come into it, you might think that it was built only 2, 4, 5 years ago. Then the Imam explains the buildings have a twofold purpose. First, they serve as institutions for the Ismaili community, and secondly, they reach out to groups of people, creating spaces for quality exhibitions, culture, and musical representation. These centers allow us to build bridges for interaction among various communities, areas, and cultures. So the purpose, the aspiration that the Imam has for these centers is completely clear, that they have a twofold purpose. They serve us, the Jama'ah, but they are ambassadors to the rest of the country about us. They represent us, and we invite others to come and use our facilities, which are for the public, like our social halls and meeting rooms, etc. Let's go to the next. This is now a series of different Ismaili centers with the Imam's quotations, okay? Right. He says that in every speech, I hope that some of you have read his speeches, for the 6 centers which are existing today, there is a foundation stone ceremony speech, and then there is an opening ceremony speech. So there are 12 speeches, which are absolutely amazing to read. And I encourage all of you to go to the AKDN website or to the Nano Wisdom's website and many others who have access to these speeches. The Imam has called them spaces for spiritual enlightenment and intellectual discovery. He says, above all, the centers are places for contemplation, reflection, meditation, upliftment, and the search for spiritual enlightenment dedicated to the preservation of spiritual values, the promotion of social development, and the enhancement of intellectual discovery. These are centers where people come together to share knowledge and wisdom. It will be a place of peace, of order, of hope, and of brotherhood, radiating those thoughts, attitudes, and sentiments which unite and which do not divide, and which uplift the mind and the spirit. Such poetic, such words of wisdom. I mean, here is the complete way of life for us Ismailis. And this is being expressed to the societies in which we live. That we Ismailis are a people of peace. We like order. We are very optimistic and hopeful. We encourage unity, brotherhood, sisterhood. We want to uplift our minds and the spirit. This is the Toronto Hall, by the way, the center, Toronto Center Jamaat Khana Hall that Charles Correa designed. And on the wall, I think you can see calligraphy in wood, which repeats the word Allah, Allah, and the way it is depicted is so beautiful that you think that it is a number of trees all lined up, because the material is wood itself, and then the dome with this type of glass, bringing in a very muted light. Even in the daytime, it's very comfortable. You could sit on that carpet in a corner and go into meditation quite easily. Okay, let's go into the next one. This is the Ismaili Center, Dushanbe, at the other end of the world from Toronto. The Tajik Ismaili community has roots in this region that extend back more than 1,000 years, as long ago as the 2nd century of Islam. The community holds a recognized and admired position in the history of human endeavor here, contributing some of the greatest names in the fields of theology, philosophy, poetry, and the sciences. And if you have read the speeches, then you will know that the Imam is referring to Pir Nasir Kisrao, he's referring to the poet Rudaki. The poet Rudaki, he was blinded by the enemies of our faith at that time. It refers to other great people like Ismail Samanov, etc. So the Imam is pointing out that the Ismailis have a very long history, and not just an ordinary history, but a history of a lot of intellectual contribution. This new center will be a place for looking back on that rich and powerful history in grateful and solemn remembrance. It will be a place as well for peaceful contemplation of the spirit and of the world as we live our lives in the present moment. And it will be a place to think about the future and how this profound heritage can shape and inform tomorrow's world. See, look at how AZIZ Imam says that we should remember our past, the heritage of it, but we should live in the present, and we should extend our heritage and our present into the future. That we shouldn't dispense with our values and our traditions and our heritage just because we live in a so-called modern time. This is why these speeches are so important, in my opinion. And then he says, and it will be a place to think about the future and how this profound heritage can shape and inform tomorrow's world. This center aspires to give physical form and spiritual space for pursuing all of these objectives. Yes, we could go to the next one. The Imam has also said that the Islamic values are all physically represented, meaning, it isn't just marble and ceramics and wood and whatever materials have been used. No, they also represent Islamic values. And when we come to the bit on symbolism, I will try and give you a few examples of that at that time as well. This first quotation, the first quotation is from that Asian Society speech that I mentioned right at the beginning. The Imam said at that time, Islam does not deal in dichotomies, but in all-encompassing unity. All-encompassing unity, meaning we don't separate our body from our soul. Our body and soul are equally important while we have this life. That's why he says spirit and body are one. Man and nature are one. We are in the midst of nature as part and parcel of nature. We have to look after nature. We should not abuse nature. because it is part of us and we are part of it. What is more, man is answerable to God for what man has created. Since all that we see and do resonates on the faith, the aesthetics of the environment we build and the quality of the interactions that take place within them reverberate on our spiritual lives. To me, this sentence is very important for the way we behave in Jamaat Khana itself, in the Jamaat Khana hall. Everything that we see and do resonates on our faith. And the quality of our interactions that take place within them, they reverberate on our spiritual lives. So if you are in Jamaat Khana and you are rude to somebody, or if you are in Jamaat Khana and we are full of pride.
Placed on hold. Please wait.
And if we are in Jamaat Khana and we backbite somebody, if we are in Jamaat Khana because we are there to show off our latest acquisitions like jewelry and clothes, these are all going to affect
You've been placed on hold. Please wait.
Our spiritual lives are going to be affected by this. And that's why the Imam is saying that he has deliberately built Jamaat Khanas in this style to make us aware how important the environment is, both the physical environment and the social environment which we create. Please make a note of this particular quotation. This quotation is very helpful in understanding the purpose of Jamaat Khana and how we should attend Jamaat Khana. And then he says, there's a bit more in this quotation, but you can't fit everything in on a slide. He says that the physical representation of Islamic values is particularly important to me. And I can show you one example here in this picture. This is the Dubai Center. This is its entrance lobby. You can see the reception desk on the left there. Here in front is a heptagonal fountain, but a very soft flowing fountain. It's not a splashing fountain. It's a very gentle sound, because you can have different sounds by the way you construct your fountains. So here you are getting the message straight away that in this very beautiful marble entrance, the muted colors, the muted sound of the fountain, you have come from the bustle and hustle of the outside world. Now you are in here, you have to calm yourself down, bring your blood pressure down, because from here you are going to enter into one of the activities of this center. And possibly you are going to the Jamaat Khana, where you are going to contemplate and reflect on your spiritual life. But if you are here early, you can sit on those benches. And those benches are looking out onto the courtyard with its greenery. You see, every possible way of calming you down. The Ismaili Center in London has a different way of doing it. It too also has a ripple fountain in the entrance. The outside building is completely modern, but unusual, unique, because there are not any other buildings in London which have this type of slatted, beveled glass doors with the teak wood, etc. There are no other buildings in London like that. But at the Ismaili Center in London, you have to walk through the entrance foyer, then you enter the foyer where you leave your coats and umbrellas and briefcases, then you go up a short few steps, turn around and go up a longer staircase, past the social hall, turn around and go towards the shoe lobby where all the shoes are. You remove your shoes. Now You have removed your coats, your outer things, umbrellas, etc. Now you're removing your shoes and you have time to think. It's a long corridor. So without your shoes, now you go up another double staircase and then you enter the lobby of the Jamaat Khana, the outer lobby or foyer, and then 3 massive teak doors with geometric patterns on them. They have 4 panels of glass. They are 2-way mirrors. You can see through. If you have come late, you would not disturb the ceremony. You would wait until, say, the dua was finished or the tasbih was finished. And then you enter the Jamaat Khana. So all this while, you have detached from your outer life and you have entered a space of the spirit, a space of peace and order and absolute serenity. When the Ismaili Center opened in London, there were newspapers who had headlines like, "Serenity comes to South Kensington." They felt it just by looking at the building that there is serenity here. And this is what you see in this picture of Dubai. And then in the second quotation, Allah says, in the tradition of Muslim spaces of gathering, the Ismaili Center, Dubai, will be a symbol of the confluence between the spiritual and secular in Islam. It's a confluence. It's not a place of dichotomy. You are not separating your body from your soul here. You are keeping them very much together, very much together. And like its functions, the center's architecture will reflect our perception of daily life, whose rhythm weaves the body and the soul, man and nature into a seamless unity. It's a different way of saying what he said in 1979 in the first quotation. That the body and spirit are together, bound, woven together in our daily life, But I think most of us during this pandemic, where we have spent a lot more time at home, we have been reflecting on how we were not leading a very life of unity between body and soul. How when we were so involved in the world that we often forgot our soul. So please, you will get this set of slides, I'm sure, because everything is shared. Read these quotations, but you please go and read the entire speeches as well. They are brilliant. And if you get your youngsters in your families to read them, it will absolutely boost their English language. For which also, as Imam during the Diamond Jubilee in Vancouver, he emphasized that not only should we know English, but it should be good English, a high quality of English, best practice English. Okay, so the Imam says then that guided by the ethic of whatever we do, see and hear, and the quality of our social interaction, they resonate on our faith and they bear on our spiritual lives. So if we keep on, like our Ginan said, "Deetha doshi kisi ko na diya, aane deetha kyun kar dijiye?" Why are we always spending time criticizing and backbiting people when we don't know, we've not even witnessed what they have done wrong? Why are we spending time on discussing the world when we are in Jamaat Khana for that 20 minutes to half an hour? We should be discussing our faith. We should be discussing our soul. This is what the Imam is saying, that whatever we do, it bears, it has repercussions on our soul and our spiritual life. And he says the center will seek to create, inshallah, a sense of equilibrium, stability, and tranquility. These are the words which really flow from the Imam's words, but they are not just words. They are actually represented physically in these buildings. They are our Islamic values. They are our ethics. And they are what the outside public will see about us. Let's carry on. Ismaili Center in Burnaby, the outside with this beautiful arch through which you enter. The Ismaili Center will stand in strongly landscaped surroundings. It will face a courtyard with fountains and a garden. Its scale, proportions, and the use beg your pardon, it should be USE, and the use of water will serve to create a serene and contemplative environment. This will be a place of congregation, of order, of peace, of prayer, of hope, of humility, and of brotherhood. From it should come forth those thoughts, those sentiments, those attitudes which bind men together and which unite. It has been conceived and will exist in a mood of friendship, courtesy, harmony. While the building will be an important focus in the social and religious life of the local Ismaili community in Burnaby, it is my hope, a very deep hope, that it will become a symbol of a growing understanding in the West of the real meaning of Islam. The real meaning of Islam. We will only be able to convey the real meaning of Islam by our actions, the way we lead our lives here in the West, particularly. But not only in the West, in the East as well, wherever we live. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Bridge building. This is very important. The Imam has been emphasizing this for a long time. Through its design and functions, like its predecessors, will reflect a mood of humility, forward outlook, friendship and dialogue. Above all, this center is being conceived in the ethic of respect for human dignity. It will therefore aim to empathize with and to expand our intellectual, cultural and moral lives. Yes? Because, there will be so many seminars, there will be so many conferences, there will be so many workshops, so many concerts and other type of theatrical presentations and shows. All this leads to the development of a human being, all-rounded development, physical development, spiritual development, moral development, intellectual development. And this ethic of connectivity with others has deep spiritual roots in Islam as for other faiths. Yes? What are the deep spiritual roots of our ethic of connectivity? What Hazrat Imam chose for this Golden Jubilee symbol, that we are all created from the single soul. I'm going to talk about that a bit more tomorrow. And in the next sentence, it stems ultimately from humankind's sense of humility in the presence of the divine. You only have to look outside your window, even though you may be in a lockdown like we are in Britain. But when you look outside and you see how the flowers have all come alive, how the trees are growing leaves, you cannot but be impressed by this miracle, which happens every year. This is humility in the presence of the divine. In this light, this next sentence is very important because this is Dubai, UAE. He says, in this light, human diversity itself is seen as a gift of Allah. Cultural differences are embraced as a blessing, and different interpretations of faith are seen as a mercy, one that nourishes the Ummah's vast identity and its constructive interface with society at large. If you read that sentence very carefully, the Imam is actually saying what we have already discussed in last weekend. We, Ismailis, for 1240 years, we suffered because people wouldn't recognize our diversity of interpretation. But now we are in an age, from Maulana Sultan Muhammad Shah Salawatullah alayhi's time. Time is very different. This is a new age for us, Ismaili. This is a time where we can breathe and we can live our interpretation. Okay, and I remember in a Farman, the Imam has said, our interpretation is a good interpretation. It's a Pakistan Farman. This is UAE, which is all majority Muslims. So the Imam is emphasizing the diversity of people, cultures, languages, but also of different interpretations of faith. Okay, let's carry on. Yes, I'm afraid this is a bit dense because this is from Maulana Hazimam's interview with Philip Joe. He is the author of the book Under the Eaves of Architecture, the Aga Khan, Builder and Patron, which was published during the Golden Jubilee. It's a beautiful book, and this whole entire interview is in there, and it's worth reading. And in this, the Imam answered one of his questions when it says, in much of Islamic architecture you find a sense of spirituality. You find that spirituality not only in religious buildings. If you think of the history of landscape architecture, that's gardens and parks, and you relate that to references to heaven in the Quran, you find very strong statements about the value of the environment, the response of the senses to scent, to noise, music, or water. When you go to the Ismaili Center in Toronto, because there is that park between the museum and the Jamaat Khana, and there are reflecting pools and beautiful greenery, some benches, and people are sitting there calmly. Obviously, they are finding a sense of repose, serenity, peace. They're not rushing around now. They're getting ready to go to Jamaat Khana. They've been to the museum maybe, or maybe they have come from work. And a few minutes of that and you are in a different world. Because the scent of the plants, the lack of noise there, or because the fountains are running. At the Ismaili Center, the roof garden is open to the very busy traffic. But because the fountains are splashing, you don't get the sound of the traffic, even though it is not an indoors thing. It's an outdoor garden. I think that in a number of spaces in the Islamic world, which are not religious buildings, there is a heightened sense of spirituality. You do not treat these spaces as theological spaces. You treat them as spaces that aim to give you a sense of spiritual happiness, of spiritual enjoyment. In a funny way, Azhar Park in Cairo has some of that. We have carried out surveys on visitor reactions, and a large percentage of visitors to this park in Cairo talk about spirituality. These are everyday visitors. And when I show you some of the feedback to the tours that I conducted, you will also see that. He says, yes, or giving them a sense of individuality. Sometimes they also need that. I think spirituality is not necessarily experienced only in a societal context. It can be very much an individual thing. There are certain times when you need to create space where spirituality can be experienced individually. Think about that. We should have spaces where one person can hide in a corner and experience its individual spirituality. I think of parks as places where spiritual is very powerful. We have also worked recently on dormitories for universities. What the West would think of as a secular space, in our context, are very often not exclusively secular. They actually seek to contain, in an area or in the totality of the building, a space which has an additional message or an additional sense to it. If you walk through the Aga Khan University in Karachi, There are a number of spaces on that campus that are very unique, I think. You know, as Imam has said this about the Al Khan University, I am a witness to that. I have been to Pakistan again and again and again. And every time you go to the Al Khan Hospital, I think a good number of the people there have not come to visit the patients. They have come there for the fresh air, for the fountains and the greenery, away from the dust and murkiness of Karachi. They actually bring picnics. And then finally, in the Islamic world, we always look at the relation between deen and dunya. And we cannot tolerate that one functions without the other. The notion of deen and dunya and the integrity of human life is a very important issue. Really resounding words. So the first value that all of these centers project is that we do not separate deen and dunya. Okay, let's go. All right, now this is feedback. I have a whole file of letters from people I showed around. You can imagine 16 years, I showed a lot of people around, but I've only chosen few of them. This woman was the education advisor to the Brent Borough in London, and she said, listening to speeches in such a serenely beautiful setting was a welcome reminder of the aims of education for life. Look, she was an education advisor. Coming to the Ismaili Center, she suddenly realized how important serenity and beauty and listening to speeches is to remind about the aims of education for life. An amazing statement she made. This NADFAS is an arts organization. It was most edifying to hear you speak of the religious and spiritual meaning of Islam, and we must thank you for sharing this with us. We all enjoyed it so much, and for myself, I feel we got much closer to Islam. My ladies know now that you and your sisters are not now. We can't see you because you have disabled the camera. This is a walkabout group, you know, they go visiting places all over London. And you see, because I was the one leading the tour, and you can tell from now that I have confidence that, you know, I'm not, I don't believe that my faith persecutes me because I'm a female. And it all obviously went across to them. And they had been under the impression that all Muslim women are downtrodden. But she changed her mind. When I met my group of primary school teachers, they were very grateful for a visit which began to make real for them the diversity which exists within Islam. He's the General Inspector of Religious Studies in Ealing. Then, from the senior lecturer of this study, Institute of Archaeology, I feel that you interpreted the architectural symbolism of the building along with a feeling for what the core of the faith of the Ismaili community might be in a most illuminating manner. I'm sorry I couldn't take out the words of praise for me personally, because they would really take away from the quotation. Your contribution has most certainly made my students think more deeply about how sacred and culturally significant objects can be. These are people who are studying museums and heritage. She says that coming to the Ismaili Center made them more conscious of how important, sacred and culturally significant objects are. This one is from the. Also, I should like to have known more about the deeper significance of the sacred geometry used in the building, but that will probably need several days, if not years, to explore. However, above all, I would like to thank you for the friendliness I felt at the Ismaili Center. When he came up to the lovely roof garden with the playing fountains and the domes nearby, the domes belong to the Victoria and Albert Museum, by the way, I felt that this way we could truly be at peace with one another. And this has to be it is the only way for the human race to survive. Next one, please. This is from the Windsor Castle mid-service clergy course. We were especially impressed by the use of space and light and the sense of prayerfulness and serenity. There you are. You see, Hazrat Imam's words from the speech are now here in the feedback. So you can see that Hazrat Imam's aspirations are being fulfilled by the public. The question is, how much are we, his spiritual children, fulfilling them? Then from the Friends of the Victoria and Albert Museum, the meaning it all has for you shone through your words. We were uplifted and enhanced by the depth of your feeling. Thank you for giving us such a wonderful experience. I'm sure the memory of it will remain in your visitors' minds for many years. This is from a headmaster or the teacher in charge of a junior school from Canterbury. It is, because Canterbury is outside London. They don't have the diversity of human beings that London has. So he's saying, it is so difficult to enable pupils to understand Islam, both for its own sake and to assist in the understanding of the Islamic Empire. So much seems alien and incomprehensible. With the help of the magnificent building, you managed to do this. At last, I began to understand. Then this is a private person. He said he and his friend visit London all the time. But look at what he says. After the visit to your center yesterday, we are hard pressed to compare the visit with any we have experienced in the past. It's a wonderful compliment, yeah? Your enthusiastic description of the architecture and the spiritual life you put into the building was indeed moving. And then this group called Business in Europe, you can see from the name, Newt is probably European name, not British. In our Western civilization, it is almost impossible to find buildings that are interesting and attractive. Today, everything is geared to economy of space and of materials, resulting in cramped and very boring construction. Your center was planned and produced by people who are able to translate their faith into pillars, ceilings, fountains, and walls. This is quite apparent in entering the building, and the sensation of peace and harmony is immediate. Serenity comes to South Kensington. That was the headline of the newspaper. Okay, and then I think there's still one more, one more feedback. This is from Fatima Mernisi. She's a very famous Moroccan feminist writer, and at the time she came, she was a member of the Al Khan University Board of Trustees. The whole board had come, and I was privileged to show them around. And she wrote this I told her to autograph her book, which I have, about women in Islam, and she wrote this on the front page. I keep a wonderful impression of life, intellectual life, emotional life, and architecture. I am very privileged to have visited the center, and I wish for it to be what it ought to be, a meeting ground. And this one, the enthusiasm which you obviously feel for the building, for the way in which the architecture enhances the spiritual atmosphere, infected us all, I am sure. It certainly did me, and makes me look more closely at other things now. There is a sharpened sense of looking. And this is from the Jewish Board of Deputies. Visiting your fine center was a deep experience, and you are to be congratulated for creating such a magnificent communal facility. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Now, I would like, because I'm most familiar with Ismaili Center, London, I want to share just very briefly some points about the symbolism there. And how does it represent? Physically, it represents our beliefs, faith beliefs, as well as our ethics. So, for instance, geometry. There's so much geometry there. It's in the carpets, it's in the ceilings, it's in the perforated screen, in the Jamaat-khana, it's everywhere, geometry. But the way the geometry is always in a frame. So for instance, if the carpet is a square, at the border of the carpet there is a line. And when you look at the line, you see that the geometric lines are simply cut off. In other words, if there was no frame, there was no border, the lines would keep on running, keep on continuing. And this is definitely the concept of eternity. No beginning, no end. And also, geometry, measuring the earth, means that it creates a sense of order and balance. And where you have order and balance, automatically there's going to be a feeling of serenity and peace. The other thing at the Ismaili Center is there are lots and lots of reflection. The ceiling reflects the carpet on the floor. Many of them, all over. And this is your two dimensions, deen and dunya. Deen and dunya, they are always together. Then the heptagon, which you saw in the picture of Hazimam with Prince Charles. The heptagon on the ground floor, it says number 7. And Professor Carl Schleminger, when he took us around the Ismaili Center in the early days, he actually mentioned that the heptagon is the most difficult shape to create. But they did it. And here you are, that the 7-sided geometric shape has many, many meanings, because a symbol doesn't have one meaning always. It always has more than one meaning. So the 7 could represent the 7 pillars of Shia Islam, and the first and foremost is walaya, devotion and obedience of the Imam. 7 pillars of Shia Islam. It can mean the 7 cycles of 6 prophets or natics, and the 7th cycle is the cycle of Hazrat Qaim. Yeah? And in the lift lobby on the ground floor, there are 2 7-sided pillars, and in between them there is another 7-sided shape which is marked in the marble. And then above it there are 1, 2, 3. In the ceiling on the 3rd floor, there is another 7-sided cone inserted in the ceiling, in the middle of which there is a lamp, which is at an angle. And when that lamp is switched on, particularly in the winter when it gets dark so early, that shaft of light creates another heptagon on top of the marble heptagon. 7 on 7, which is 49. Isn't that amazing? There are some very amazing things. For instance, the Ismaili Center in Toronto is 49 Winford Drive. The address is 49 Winford Drive. Okay. Then there are on the first floor, 3, which is open plan, by the way. There are 3 symbols of light, which you would have to be blind not to notice that. There's the chandelier. There are the beveled windows, which when the sun comes through them, the beveling creates rainbow colors, and the spectrum of the rainbow has 7 colors. And then there is a mural by Gulji on the wall, which is about Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. 3 outstanding symbols of light. Then when you go to the Jamaat-khana floor, the pillars are all octagons. Many of the symbols. The squares on the entrance doors are 4-sided but in pairs, so that's another 8. And then when you come to the number 8, the Quran tells you in 69:17, and also I have number, I think there may be a mistake there, yeah? I'll have to check that. That 8 angels hold up Allah's throne. Think about that. Who are these 8 angels? Why does Allah's throne need to be held up by them? What can it mean? Oh yes, sorry. There is that is quite correct. 69:17, and then there is a semicolon. That number 7 belongs to the next thing. That in the Quran there is a story of the 7 sleepers and their dog, which is in Surah 18, Ayah 22. If you are curious, read that. Try to understand the significance and the symbolism of 7 plus 8. And then there is a hadith where the Prophet says that there are 8 doors to paradise, ALWAAZ. Yeah? And the other one is calligraphy in the screen in the Ismaili Jamaat Khana hall. There are 3 names. This is done by our friend Carl Schleminger. It is amazing, equal. The widest and the longest panel is the word Allah. And on the right hand side is Muhammad, and on the left hand side is Ali. There is a gallery behind the screen, so you can read it from the front, but if you go behind, you can also read it from the back. Because the way the names have been arranged, you see one name facing you, one name facing away. But it is continuous. You know, this is the concept of Daimu Zikr. So if you are saying Ali, 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 Ali without break, or Muhammad, 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 or Allah, 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 Allah without break, this is called Zikr. This is called continuous Zikr. And but the amazing thing is that if you know a bit of Arabic, you realize that you don't read the wood. You are reading the light which comes through the grills. And this light is the same light for Allah, Muhammad, or Ali. And that reminds you instantly of Atiullah wa Atiur Rasul wa ulil amri minkum. It reminds you of monoreality. It reminds you of the oneness of light. And then, of course, in the roof garden, that 4 rivers of paradise, Surah 47, Ayah 15. That is a graphic, the roof garden is a complete physical representation of the concept of paradise. I think, is that the last one, Arjifai? Let's see. Yes, that was the last one. Thank you all of you. And special thanks to my young friend Nasir bin Fizareli for helping me with these slides. He was very good at taking out all these wonderful pictures which are on the net, and to put them in my slides so they are not just words and words, but there are illustrations as well. So I finish here by saying that the Ismaili centers have set a standard. All the Jamaat Khanas which have been refurbished or built afterwards, after the establishment of the Ismaili Center, their design and decor has been affected by the centers, right? Even the design and decor of the Padramlis are affected by them. They have set a standard, in other words. And this standard is to represent who we are. And who we are is not only in a physical sense, but it is in the sense of our own interactions with others as well as within ourselves. What is the quality of our social interactions? And do we realize that our social interactions, whether with outsiders or with Jamaat, they reverberate our soul. They reverberate on our soul. They affect our spiritual life. So I will finish here now, and if there are questions, please ask them, and I will try to answer them to the best of my ability.